Hi, I'm Shaquanda Dalton from LearnAsYouWrite.com, and today we're going to be talking about self-editing your novel, which is exciting because this is your finished manuscript that you wrote on the computer, and you are finally going to edit it the best way you can before you give it to your editor. So in this presentation, I'm going to go over a little bit of simple ways that you can self-edit your novel, and then I'm going to tell you how I self-edit my novels, and it'll be really quick and really fun. Okay, so why self-edit? Well, you don't want to give your professional editor a sloppy first draft. That doesn't look really good. It's not really professional. It's not the best thing in the world, trust me. But you want to make it the best you can be because you know your story better than anyone else. So you know if the character didn't say anything right before the editor will because you know the character's personality. And you should, right? Because you wrote it. And really, some editors charge by the hour. You can save yourself a lot of time, a lot of money if you pre-edit. That way it'll limit their editing time. That way things will go a lot more smoother, and that way they could focus on things you miss as opposed to just the overall layer of, hey, you could have fixed it yourself, right? So don't waste your time doing stuff you could do yourself. Okay, so where do you really start with this? You want to start big picture, which is the story itself. How do you have? Is it the story that works for you? Is it you want to look at the plot itself? Does it have a theme? Does it make sense? Does it flow? You also want to make sure that the story is actually. You want to make sure that you actually have a story. You want to make sure that it's actually there, that it actually has a great climax, that it has a good introduction. This is not where you make sure the spelling is right. This is where you make sure you get a story right. So some simple things you might want to look at is you might want to go through each chapter, each scene, and maybe select, okay, what am I giving off the right emotion that I'm trying to get off here? Am I presenting, like, if I was a reader, would I understand this? And you want to think of your story as a whole. Like, what is this story? Is it a love story? Is it an adventure story? Does it come off that way? So that's really important too. So a simple read through, you can either print it off or do it from your computer. It doesn't take that long. You want to kind of skim through it a little bit, not go too fast, but maybe to just get the idea, see if it evokes anything in you. But the first time you go over it is not the last time, but you want to just make sure there's no plot holes. You want to make sure that you didn't forget a detail. You want to make sure that you didn't skip 2 months. You want to make sure that you killed the character, and then in the next chapter he's alive again. This is the first, do I have all the pieces to my puzzle editing phase right now? Okay, so very, very big picture right here. The next thing you want to do is, it's called structure editing, which is basically, now that you got all the pieces, all your pieces connecting well. Does your story flow? Does it make sense? Is the reader not confused? This is more, think sentence layer. Think, is this sentence structured in a way that makes it make sense? Are these chapters lining up right? Is it the right point of view? Is it the right tone? Like, am I missing anything that will make the story better? So just dig a little deeper. Do you need to add scenes? Is there something that you probably forgot? Do you need to delete scenes? Because sometimes you write and you realize, hey, I don't really need this to make the story make sense. And that's kind of the hard part of being like your own editor is because you're gonna have to delete some of your work. So yeah, nobody likes to hear that part, but it is true. But you want to make sure that your plot lines up the way you want it and that everything is going according to plan. This one I wouldn't rush through it. I really take my time with it. One of the things I get caught up on is rewording. Just rewording and rewording. You don't want it to be too repetitive, and you want to make sure that you're not saying something again that you said earlier in the story. And are you adding too much backstory to your work? Some of that stuff can be cut and it can be put in dialogue. So that's something that you can also look for. But this is the real stage where you want to just really kind of look at your words and how you got everything placed. Is it placed in the right order? Making sure it flows well. Not yet with the grammar and editing. Don't touch it because it might get deleted. Why make a paragraph beautiful if you then realize that, oh, I made that paragraph later on, so I don't need it right here, and then you end up deleting it. So try not to waste your time too much here. So the last step you might want to do is try your best to get as much spelling as you can. This is where you want to go sentence by sentence, line by line, checking spelling, grammar as best you can. Don't worry about it. Your editor should be able to fix it for you. One thing I would make sure that you look for is word choice and cliches and stuff that you probably should change a little bit. I also tend to do this. I tend to use the same word in the beginning of the sentence and use it again later in the sentence or in the next sentence. So using a different verb, using a different adjective makes it less boring for readers to read. Word choice itself is a whole different thing, especially when it comes to dialogue. You want to make sure your dialogue fits each character. So at this point, you can make sure it's not, not just what your characters are saying, just how they say it. Make sure it fits with their personalities. Also, the narrative voice, the paragraphs that are not the characters talking, but the narrative voice, you want to make sure that's also very, not neutral, it doesn't have to be neutral, but even. Like, if you're going to do it in the beginning, make sure you do it in the middle and the end. If you do it at the end, make sure you do it throughout your story. So, that's probably the last thing, the final, then layer of editing you're going to try to do for yourself here. Oops. Okay, so the main point is not to stress over editing your work. This is basically something you do before you give it to your editor, who's going to really take the big leap in control of it for you. So make sure you hire someone who does it for a living. They will probably catch 100+ things that you miss, even if you do all of this stuff I'm telling you. But that's the point. You want to make it the best you can be so that when you give it to somebody else, they can make it the best they can make it, and it's just not you or them doing all the work. If you make it to the point to where you can't see any mistakes before you give it to your editor, then that's perfect. That's how it should be. So that way they can just figure out little deeper stuff that you probably missed or didn't even think about. It doesn't have to be misspelled words. It could be, hey, did you think your character could probably do this instead of that? And be like, what? So don't stress too much over it. You can't make it perfect. It's pretty much one person can't make anything perfect. So don't stress too much over it. So one little run through of how I self-edit. When I first did my first book called When Love Hurts, I typed it all up on the computer, blah, blah, blah. Then I printed out all the pages out. It cost me $5 to print it, by the way. But I printed it out, and then I read through. I would go through each page, and I would think to myself, okay, what happened in this page, and how did it make me feel? Did I feel anything? Did anything intrigue me? Does it make me want to keep reading? And of course, I paid attention to the story, but at the first time I go through it, like I told you before, it's not to really fix any grammar or anything. It's to make sure my story makes sense and that I'm not leaving out big, important chunks of information I should be having inside the book. But it's a preference choice. You don't have to print it out. You can just read through it on your computer if you like to do that. Save you some paper, save trees if you're all that, if you're all into that. But I look for, if I didn't write this, would I understand this? If I didn't write it myself, would it interest me? Will it excite me? Are these words I wrote making sense to other people other than myself? It's it's a real putting yourself into a different perspective kind of editing, which I think everyone is gonna have to do if you're gonna self-edit it for yourself. Okay. So at the second thing I do at this point, my paper is kind of marked up ridiculously, not even grammar wise. It's all on the sidebar stuff. Add this scene, add this part, move this part to this part later in the novel. It's really crazy, but it's really exciting to see that I'm really making a lot of progress. But I'm just really making sure everything's in order, and I go into the computer and I fix the things that I marked up to fix, which takes a lot of time, which makes me think maybe I should have done this on the computer in the first place. But I love having it printed out and in front of me that I can read. So I go back on the computer and I put in all the corrections that I marked down to put in, and it takes a while, to be honest with you. It does take a while. Sometimes, like I said, paragraphs may be moved, crossed out, anything can change. I might even add a character in at this point. When you go through it the first time, you catch a lot of things, big surface level things. Okay. So the second thing I do is, oh well, I always kind of said this. I add the scenes that I need to add. I delete the scenes that I said that I was gonna do. I basically do everything that I marked up to do, and after that, I go through it again to look for grammar and typos, which isn't my strongest point as of right now. But I do the best I can. Spell check is not the solution to every grammar and spelling error because I use a lot of slang in my novel, so it doesn't really help me. I actually have to go through line by line and make sure everything is exactly how I want it to look. So that is time consuming. But the trick I use now is, now I tend to do on the computer first when I go to grammar and spelling because it's easier. But the thing is, my eyes get tired very quickly, so I have to close my eyes and rest for a little while, and then resting goes to sleeping, and I don't know. You really have to know yourself with this and figure out what's best for you to try a lot of different things. And hey, if you got the time, print it out. Take your time with it. You got your whole life to do this, so unless you can set up crazy deadline for yourself, but that's cool too. But just keep working on it every day, and you'll probably figure out a speed that's right for you, and you'll probably be able to zap through editing really fast. And okay, this slide is about little reasons why you can't catch everything. We're not professional editors here. We're mostly writers, and we're not trained to see everything. And I guess as a human tendency, we see what we want to see, and we forget things. And since we wrote the story, we're too close to our work, meaning that we know what we meant, but we don't know that the reader doesn't know what we meant. So we have to make sure our words are clear and precise and not to the point where it can go over a reader's head. That will make everything confusing. So it's better to have a boring, clear sentence than a glossied up, confusing sentence, if that makes sense. Okay, so eventually you are finished with your self-editing. Don't keep self-editing to the point to where you're just on it for a year and you're not moving on to the next phase because you're too scared to, or you think it's not perfect, perfectionism will hold you back. It will. You can never make it perfect because you can always add another. You can always add another scene. You can always take away another scene. It's impossible kind of to be really satisfied because you know you can do more, and it's comes to a point where you gotta say, okay, I've done the best I can do. Time to put it out there. Time to give it to my editor. Time to give it to my agent. Time to go on to the next step. You have to keep going. Don't let this part of the novel writing process keep you from going on to doing better things in your whole novel writing career. Okay? So, you have a team there for a reason. And Steph Godwin says, just ship it. Ship it. Ship it out. Put it out there, okay? Give it on to the next stage. Well, I want to thank you guys for watching my video. I'm Shaquanda Dalton from LearnAsYouWrite.com, which is about helping writers enhance their dialogue, character development, and creativity. It's very fun. Subscribe to my channel so that you can get the next video I'm going to be putting up here. Thank you so much.